Hi, and welcome to the Just Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Isabella Jordan, a first-time mom with a passion for helping other women navigate motherhood. The weight of motherhood can oftentimes feel overwhelming and isolating. We can begin to lose ourselves in the struggle between balancing the demands of our family and still finding the time to invest into ourselves. This was, and honestly still is, something that I find so difficult in motherhood. For a long period of time after becoming a new mom, I felt lost. I didn't know who I was, what I was supposed to do, and I felt so alone in the process. I neglected self-care and I wasn't showing up as my most authentic self with my family. If anything, I was drained, I was overwhelmed, and I felt like a shell of a human being. If you can relate to this feeling, it's totally okay, but it is time to stop carrying the load alone. I'm starting the Just Motherhood podcast to help you become your best self in motherhood. Motherhood demands so much from us, and it's important for us to take the time and care we need to show up as our best and most authentic selves. Not only does your family deserve it, but you deserve it as well. And this is a journey that I've been going on for the past several months. We're going to discuss all topics of motherhood. Nothing is off the table. We'll talk about the invisible load, self-care, mental health, postpartum depression, postpartum weight loss, and so many practical things. Whether you're currently pregnant, freshly postpartum, or you've been a mom for several years, this podcast is for you, and I am so excited to be a part of your motherhood journey. The Just Motherhood podcast has been on my heart for quite a while now. Since becoming a mother, I've struggled with a handful of different issues that we will get into at a much later time. But as I learned how to grow in this role, I knew that I wanted to help other mamas navigate all the beauty and difficulties that come with motherhood. I started posting on my TikTok account in the fall of 2023, and I was hoping to grow and foster a community of moms. I've luckily seen success on TikTok, and I'm so thankful to have made several mom friends on the platform. Most of my videos are pretty lighthearted, and I knew I wanted to take another step to dive deeper with moms to share more encouragement and practical information. This past May, I decided to start a YouTube channel, mainly because it was a dream of mine since I was in middle school. I would stand in front of the mirror and pretend I was talking to a camera about all my makeup products and random stuff. But I also felt like I should do YouTube because my husband used to do it, and so it seemed like a natural next step for me. I sat down and created a whole list of mom content video ideas that I would create, but I just wasn't excited about it. Mainly, it was the thought of having to edit 20 to 30 minute videos and get all dolled up for the camera every day. I'm not gonna lie, it was just not the platform for me. I didn't want to create videos that felt like I was talking at moms. I wanted to feel like I was talking with moms. My ultimate goal was to create a community where we can all talk with each other and come alongside each other to lessen the load. While I was on a walk with my son and dog a few weeks ago, listening to a podcast, the thought finally hit me. Why don't I start a podcast? I'm always listening to podcasts on walks, in the car, while cleaning, and let's face it, as a mom, it is so much easier to throw in an AirPod and listen to a podcast instead of sitting down to watch a whole 30-minute YouTube video. And so, on that walk, the Just Motherhood podcast was born. I'm going to deem it my second child. The name of Just Motherhood is actually a play on my social media handles, which is Just Isabella J. But I wanted to call it Just Motherhood because I'm going to be sharing the real, raw parts of motherhood in its entirety. There's no filter, no sugarcoating. It's just motherhood. It is what it is. It's beautiful. It's crazy. It's messy. It is motherhood. So in this first episode, I wanted to share a little bit about myself to give you some insight into what my life as a mom looks like. Maybe there's some things that we have in common or things that we can learn from each other. This is probably going to be a little bit out of order, but I kind of wanted to group it in together by topic instead of making it chronological. Like I said in my intro, I am a first-time mom, and my son Elliot has just turned 1 in June. It was a very bittersweet moment for me, celebrating his first birthday. My husband Edward and I are technically high school sweethearts, I guess. I don't know. I've always said we are, but we attended the same high school Although we didn't know each other until we met at our first job when I was 16 and he was 17, we started dating a few months after meeting each other and then got married after almost 4 years of dating at the ages of 20 and 21. We initially planned to have kids about 5 years into being married, but I ended up getting pregnant with Elliot a few months before our 2-year anniversary, and I had Elliot 2 months before I turned 23. I faced a lot of anxiety going into motherhood, and I felt unequipped and ill-prepared to become a mother. I felt like I was still trying to figure out how to be married, how to be an adult woman, and I was so nervous about bringing a baby home so early in our marriage. During my pregnancy, I could already feel a pull to want to be home with my son, and as being a stay-at-home mom was a dream of mine long before I ever got pregnant. But I also knew that with the current state of our finances and the instability of my husband's job, since he worked in a blue-collar role, being a stay-at-home mom would not be a possibility for me after having Elliot, and I really struggled with the thought of sending my son to daycare, and I found it hard finding a daycare in my area that met all of my needs and expectations. As my pregnancy progressed, I faced some uncomfortable pregnancy symptoms, and I ultimately made the decision to be induced at 39 and a half weeks, which was an amazing decision for me, and I am so glad that I did it. It was a wonderful induction and birth experience, and I am going to definitely share that at a later date in a podcast episode. Elliot and I really struggled to breastfeed. He wasn't able to get a good latch, and I was getting so incredibly engorged that it only complicated things more. At 3 days old, I could sense that he was starting to lose too much weight, and I was concerned that his eyes were starting to look very yellow. And the hospital actually miscalculated how much weight he lost, so he had actually lost too much weight for us to almost even really have gone home. So I immediately started pumping, and I am grateful that my hospital gave me a manual pump because I had not gotten one yet, thinking that I would not need one until my maternity leave ended. So I was super ill prepared for pumping. But on that day, with my manual pump in hand, I started my exclusive pumping journey, which lasted until my son was almost 10 months old. Throughout my pumping journey, I struggled with my milk supply, mainly because I was extremely uneducated about pumping at the beginning of your milk supply coming in, and so I never established that good supply. And pumping every 3 to 4 hours truly drained me, and it did not help with my mental health struggles, which we'll get into in just a second. I hated being tied to that pump, and it always made me feel like a failure for not being able to directly breastfeed Elliot. Because of my low supply, we started to supplement with formula when Elliot was a little over 4 months old, and then I ultimately made the decision to switch to formula when he was almost 10 months old. Several weeks into the postpartum period, I could tell that the emotions and thoughts that I was experiencing were not just the baby blues. It was definitely a much bigger issue, and I had struggled with anxiety and depression several times in my life, and I knew that I was dealing with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. I honestly did try to suppress things and act like I was okay, smile through, push through, but deep down I was extremely overwhelmed, unhappy, and honestly, I was getting checked out. I did finally reach out to my OBGYN at 5 months postpartum, and I got prescribed antidepressants. So I started taking those along with going into therapy. I returned to work after my 12-week maternity leave, and part of me was excited mainly to be around other adults, and my husband actually became a stay-at-home dad so that he could take courses to switch careers. So I was happy with leaving my son with him. But the other part of me was grieved. I missed being with Elliot 24/7, and I was so worried that I would miss out on so many of his big life events and milestones, being away from home for 8 to 9 hours a day. As each week of work passed me by, the longing to be home only grew stronger. My work performance was starting to suffer, and I was mentally checked out at work. And as we entered into the holiday season, my husband had finished an entry-level course for the new career he wanted to start. So he decided to look for a job that he could get at an entry-level position and I would be able to make the switch to be a stay-at-home mom. And I am happy to say that I did finally become a stay-at-home mom at the beginning of February. It was a more difficult transition than I imagined it would be, and I honestly kept questioning if I had made the right decision. But today, I can say that this was the best choice I could have made, and I am truly feeling like I'm starting to thrive in motherhood and being a stay-at-home mom. Something else that I'm currently working through is my relationship with my body and my self-image. I am in the process of showing up as my best self in my physical health by healing my relationship with food and prioritizing physical activity. While the numbers on the scale do mean very little, I am happy with the progress that I am making, and I've hit 18 pounds under my average pre-pregnancy weight. I'm also on a journey to deepen my relationship with God. I started to use motherhood as an excuse to not pursue Jesus in this season, but my son is the reason I need Jesus now more than ever, if I'm being honest. And I feel like I show up as a better wife, a better mom, a better friend when I prioritize Jesus every day. I know that motherhood can feel overwhelming and we're all being pulled into 100 different directions. It's easy to prioritize tasks, to-do lists, our families, and just about anything else instead of prioritizing ourselves and our health in all areas. When we're not healthy emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually, we suffer, but so do our families. Motherhood can be a lot to handle, but it's my goal to help you manage the tensions and demands that you face while also giving yourself the time and attention you need to show up as your best self in motherhood. You deserve it, and your family deserves it. Thank you for taking the time to join me on my first episode of the Just Motherhood podcast. While I already have several episodes planned out, I do want to prioritize your needs and questions. If you have any questions about any of the topics that I mentioned or other areas within motherhood, please email me at justisabellaj@gmail.com. That's just J-U-S-T, Isabella, I-S-A-B-E-L-L-A, and the letter J, @gmail.com. My email is also going to be below in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, please take a moment to leave a review so that this podcast can reach other mamas in need of encouragement and guidance. And make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss out on our future episodes. I pray that you have a wonderful week, and remember, you are loved, you are worthy, and you are chosen. See you next week, Mama.